Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Anglican Unscripted. This is episode 149, and you're watching two guys who still write 14 instead of 15 on the checks. It is.
Kevin, I'll still cash yours, but
Yeah, you'll still cash the check. Of course we will. I'm Kevin Carlson.
and I'm George Conger. Today's January 7th, 2015.
George, Wednesday edition of the show, and people are going, well, why haven't you been giving us Monday, Wednesday, Friday shows? We're missing you guys. First, there's not a lot of news. Second, George's life is chaos. Third, my life is chaos. Hopefully, in the near future, we can start doing the 3 shows a week again. But until then, just stay tuned, as they say. George, you have moved your parents from Kansas to Florida. How has that gone?
It's an adventure.
Yes, it is.
It's an adventure. My mother has discovered the virtues of a cell phone. And though they are within walking distance, there nothing beats 5, 6, 7 phone calls a day. Oh my goodness. I don't know how my parents survived living on their own in Kansas all these years, but it seems that they are I don't want to say deliberately helpless, but they have discovered the merits of having children around who will do things and a daughter-in-law who will do things.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, we went over today and Susan made lunch for my mother and father, and I'm doing stuff. I'm hanging things up or whatever, and I turn around and there's my mother feeding the dog off of her paper plate and I said, "Mom, do not feed the dog from the dining room table." Now, this sounds like, my mother talking to me 45 years ago. I'm talking to my mother the same way. Because, the dog spits out the lettuce and stuff onto the floor, which I have to sweep up, and it's unsanitary, it's disgusting. These are my parents. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, that's what happens.
I hope you're not watching, Mom.
Yeah, right. Yeah, hopefully our parents don't watch it, because we speak of our parents quite frequently. So yeah, your life has been chaos, and you've also experienced something that Episcopalians probably have not heard of before. It's called church growth. It was something you had in the '60s. Yeah,
we're a little scared here at Shepherd of the Hills in Lecanto because all these strangers have been coming to church. And, we weren't taught how to handle this in seminary. I'm sorry, guys, but, you just didn't tell us what to do. We've seen a good jump of 40 average Sunday attendance jump by about 40 people a Sunday since the late fall. And it's not like this, it's seasonal traffic because the season started in November. And we're up, over 180. In the Sunday after Christmas, in the first Sunday of Epiphany, man, this is when people, we are all churched out after Christmas. We're not coming back till
March.
Lent.
Yes.
We're hitting those numbers consecutively, consistently. We had a Feast of the Holy Name service, and I asked the Altar Guild to put out 12 wafers because I figured that's how many people will get. We had 25, and the entire chapel was packed, and we had to get folding chairs for people. This is a New Year's Eve service, and we got 25 people, and I thought I'd just get the regulars. No, God is doing mysterious, wonderful, powerful things, and I don't understand because I'm not used to it being an Episcopalian.
It can happen here. It can happen anywhere.
It can happen here. It can happen anywhere. God can take the Episcopal Church and turn it around. He can do anything.
Hold on. We're going to do a quick interruption because my wife is texting me right now, and I'm going to text back that I'm taping with George because we don't want to do a second take here. How should I do? Shh. Taping.
Tell her to get Chinese food, kung
Yeah.
pao chicken.
Actually, it's pizza night, George. We don't want to do that.
Pizza night.
Pizza
Oh
night. Shit taping with George. She knows who you are. George. Okay. Now, we'll see how she takes that. 99% of the times that you text something like that, it's great. Well, the 1% of the time you say shh to your wife, you're in a lot of trouble. So I'm praying for the 99. All right. So, guys, we haven't heard any news. Last time we did a show, we talked about Bishop Heather Cook. We talked about the hit and run. We talked about the facts on the ground, the rumors, and what's probably going to happen. There's two updates since then, George. What's been happening?
Tuesday this week, Bishop Eugene Sutton of Maryland met with his clergy at Camp Claggett, the Diocesan Conference Center, for a private session. No news really came out of this other than just a chance to process all that is going on. Remember about 2 years ago, I think it was 2012, a Diocese of Maryland priest was murdered.
Yeah.
And so the diocese is, in the last few years, has had some really traumatic things happen amongst its clergy. So this meeting took place, and we don't really know what happened. But we do know from the Associated Press that somebody has filed canonical charges of conduct unbecoming a member of a clergy, to wit, murder, against Bishop Cook.
Sure.
Maybe
So,
a little premature because we don't know, we don't have a criminal or civil judgment before we begin the canonical process of discipline. So we'll see. But somebody was quick to jump out, and Bishop Cook's now got another lawsuit
yeah.
against him.
Well, we'll see what happens. And my dear wife is still texting me back here. She gave me some information, and I need to reply back, okay. Now, for the real techie people, you can just do K and click send, but I'm more of an old aficionado. I'll do the OK. My mom still does OKAY when she texts. It's what it is. So, what new news do we have? Well, the Anglican Church has not been producing news. Archbishop Justin Welby
Well,
said,
Kevin, Kevin, we could do our one of the inside jokes Kevin and I has is each week I could do a story about Indian corruption.
Yep.
Another bishop arrested in the Church of South India, or the Church of North India. And Kevin, for some reason, says, George, our Indian office isn't really pushing for those stories to come out. So I have offered an Indian corruption story. There's always plenty,
Oh,
but
plenty, yeah, sure.
Kevin, the editor in chief, is spiked that.
Mixing it. Now, but we are going to, and Justin Welby was sick this week with pneumonia, so keep him in your prayers. He was not able to deliver his Christmas sermon. And also, there's not been a lot of news out of Lambeth. And so when George and I sit down and say, what are we going to talk about? We sat for like 25 minutes just going through some stories, and nothing really piqued our interest until we said, well, what about that Pope Francis thing? And once again, we're going to go for the numbers here. I'm going to talk about Pope Francis because, and here's what it's like weather. One week he's just all sunshine. The next week he's all rain. Next week he's all sunshine. The next week he's all rain. Because for us, he's the most orthodox man in the history of the church one week, and then he's borderline heretic the next week, and then he's Clancy from that angel guy from what's that movie? The Black.
It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life. So here we are again, where we're going to talk about the crazy Pope Francis, because he won't be crazy next week. We can call him crazy this week. He recently said he's going to do something about the climate change, to put out a position paper and gather some people and do some studies and stuff like that. And, well, that's great. Are you getting texts? Is that my wife texting you?
It's my daughter saying she needs money.
Call Grandpa.
Kevin, that like an Indian corruption story is not news.
No, it's
I'm
not.
sorry.
So the Pope is interested in talking about climate change as part of the teaching of the church. And so George and I are in this realm where we know there's been climate change since creation. In fact, when God created light, we know that light can only come from an organic heat source. So obviously God created the first climate and has...
Kevin, I
yes.
have to tell you, folks, pay no attention to any opinion I have over climate change. Okay? When I was in college, I took Rocks for Jocks, and I took a botany class, and that completed my science requirements. So my opinion is worthless on this point. But what I can tell you about is who Pope Francis has
Oh,
chosen
that's
to
right.
help him write this paper. See, the paper's not published. We don't know what he is going to say. But Francis has, if you will, collected a collection of the Al Gores of Italy.
Hmm.
The Catholic Church's most greeny weeny theologians are helping him write this. Anybody who was in seminary when I was in the 90s or went to school in the 80s remembers the name Leonardo Boff,
Yep.
a Brazilian theologian, just the guru of liberation theology. Well, Leonardo Boff subsequently left the priesthood. He lives with his girlfriend right now, and he's moved on from liberation theology to green theology.
Yay.
And, Gaia, Mother Earth worship,
Hug the tree.
hug a tree. And guess who's helping the Pope? Leonardo Boff. He's back. Now, I appreciate this is insider's baseball to the nth degree, but I'm not optimistic that we're going to get a balanced, well thought through paper on the environment and greenhouse gases.
Yeah. Well, we do have to be honest. There is pollution. Man is causing greenhouse gases to affect and all the other stuff. But what we do have to be honest is that we've also had climate change since day one, since the first chapter of Genesis. And so I would be really interested to read how the Pope gets away with this without going totally political, without, an Al Gore, the inconvenient gospel of climate change. It's going to be really, really interesting to read. And this is
Well,
one of the things with, when George and I are talking about the Pope, next week he's going to be do something really awesome.
well, the question is, which Pope are we talking about here? I mean, the one thing you can say about Pope Francis is that you cannot predict what he's going to do or
No,
say.
yeah, jeez,
Earlier this year, he gave a series of interviews to La Repubblica, one of the major Italian newspapers. It's a socialist newspaper, and he told its editor that Pope ridiculed the idea that there was no salvation outside the Catholic Church. The old traditional Catholic teaching, which was you got to be a Catholic, otherwise you're going to go to hell, the Pope just ridiculed. Last month, in a presentation to the Curia, Francis sounded like Pope Pius XII. That
right.
the Church is the mystical body of Christ, the Catholic Church,
Yeah.
not the wider Church. In other words, which Pope is this? The ultramontane Pope talking to the Curia, or the sort of modern, let it all hang out ecumenical Pope talking to the La Repubblica? Remember last year he had this paper on economics? Well, and he basically bashed capitalism. Well, the Pope was bashing the capitalism that he knew in Argentina and in Italy. And Kevin, I have to tell you, the two unhealthiest capitalist countries in the world are Argentina and Italy. Pope has no economic, his experience of the economy is pretty scant, is slanted.
And that's why we've gone through this last week. What did he say about his Cardinals in the Christmas? He called them basically the brood of vipers.
Brood of vipers. He was just beating the heck out of his curia.
Yeah.
And, he just appointed 20 cardinals. Not one of them, except I think maybe only one.
Yeah.
And that was somebody who's already reached retirement age, was made a cardinal from the curia.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, the curia is usually the source of where you get your cardinals from. This time around, the Pope picked archbishops from Montevideo, Uruguay, Bangkok, Thailand, from Madagascar, from Tonga. Mm-hmm. He really went out far into the bleachers to pick some cardinals.
Yeah.
None of the insiders who, should, according to the traditions, have gotten the red hat were picked.
Oh, I think
again, you can't predict the guy.
in 10 years there may not be any Italian Cardinals. It's just, he's gone out. And that's great news source. Now, we get to report on the Pope, but we want to report on some Anglican news. So Anglican news people out there, please produce some news. Make something interesting for George and I to talk about so we don't have to do the Pope and climate change.
But Kevin, when the Catholic Church sneezes, we Anglicans catch the
Yes,
flu.
we do. Yeah.
When when Pope Francis gets on his political high horse and talks about the economics and climate change, it encourages people like Catherine Jefferts Schori to talk about immigration and racism and justice. And, of course, nobody pays the least attention to Catherine Jefferts Schori, the bishops of the Episcopal Church. Not only Episcopalians, but the news people in the government don't care.
No, I mean,
But when the Pope talks, people care.
when I see my email from Neville Ray Fox, the communications director, I'm like, I can wait till later. It's not anything earth shattering. And oh, well, look, Catherine Jefferts Schori just talked about Cuba. Oh, that's going to be great, But, the Pope had some of the influence on what happened between America and Cuba. Maybe we'll talk about that in a future episode.
But see, Catherine Jefferts Schori is consistent.
Yes.
You always know that you do want to read her sermons when she talks about theology, because you'll always find something really special there. A gift can be given to you that. But when she talks about social justice issues, there is nothing to differentiate her from Nancy Pelosi.
No.
So why read it? Nancy Pelosi says it much better. Hillary Clinton, Elizabeth Warren. Those are the people who are really smoothed and polished on those issues. Catherine Jefferts Schori and also ran. You can't handicap Francis. He could be here, he could be there. You never know with this guy.
Francis Unscripted. Would we really sell out that far? I don't know. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger. And you've been watching episode 149 of Anglican Unscripted.